Hey guys, this is Tapan Sharma here, and in today's tutorial we are going to be discussing about a front-end JavaScript form validation library called Parsley. So Parsley is basically a front-end validation library, and it can be applied to any kind of project while we are building where we can have multiple types of forms, and we need to apply some validation techniques like validating the email or validating input of certain length or some certain value if certain value is required. So in such situations we can use Parsley.js to apply the front end, to apply the form validations. And in this tutorial we are going to be discussing about how we can implement the Parsley.js into a Laravel application. And one of the main advantages of using a front-end validation library over the server-side validation is that it isolates the server-side validations, and it separates the server side as well. It separates the server side and the client-side validations. So if we have only the required validations can be performed on the server side, like having the unique email of users, and certain validations can be applied, and hence it helps to reduce the server workload, and hence makes our application much more efficient. So in this tutorial we will be discussing about how we can integrate Parsley.js into a Laravel application. And the first thing that we need to do is we'll first download the Parsley.js. We'll integrate the Parsley.js into our Laravel application, and then we'll check the documentation to check the different type of validation techniques that we can apply into our Laravel application. So let's go to the download page, and what I'll do is I'll just download the Parsley.js file here. So we have a Parsley.js file, and what we can also do is I'll just save link as and download it here. Let's download in the desktop and save. Okay, I'll just download in the downloads folder and save it here. Okay, and we also need to download the CSS file. And to download the CSS file, just go to the documentation page, and in here in the installation section just click on the Parsley CSS link here, and then you can grab that Parsley CSS file as well. So go to save link as and download it. I'll download it in my downloads folder and save it here. So both our files have been downloaded. So what I'll do is I'll just go to the VS Code, and let me just quickly talk about my setup here. So what I've done is I have installed a Laravel application, and what I've done is I have created a simple create.blade.php file inside a post folder. So this consists of a simple form setup which consists of two input types. One of is type text, and it consists of enter post title. So in order to enter the post title, and another one is to input the description. So, and all the other techniques like validating the email and all we'll perform them as we go along. So let me just show you the setup in my browser. So what I've done is I've created a simple admin panel, and these are the two input fields that I've created. And okay, let's copy these two files into our project directory. So what I'll do is I'll just go to the downloads folder and copy these files, and in my VS Code let me just go to the public folder and reveal in file explorer. So what I'll do is I'll just copy these two files in my public directory. So I've already downloaded these two files. So what I'll do is I'll just skip this, and you can copy these two files in the public directory. Okay, let me just replace these, and go to our create.blade.php, and I'll just define a section here. So a section for styles, and what I'll do is I'll just create a link to link our CSS file, which will go to asset, and the name of our file is, let me just complete this first. And the name of our file is Parsley.css. Save it, and let's also go to the bottom and define a section for including our scripts. And create a script tag. The src will be asset, and inside we have a file called Parsley.js. Save the file, and let's check whether our import is working or not. So view page source, and as you can see we have a Parsley.css file, and it has been loaded here, and also our JS file, so Parsley.js. Okay, we have only one file. What's the problem here? Which is parsley.min.js. Okay, so we also need to specify the min file. And now let's go to the view page source and reload our page. And now our JavaScript file is also loaded. So let's cut all these. And now let's check the documentation of the Parsley.js website, and we have already installed these and also included our jQuery. Okay, we also need to include the jQuery file. So what I've done here is I have in my master file, what I've done is I've already imported the jQuery main.js file, so don't forget to include that. So the jQuery main.js should be imported first, and the Parsley main.js file will be under the jQuery file, so make sure to do that. And the way we will call our form is, the way we will validate the form is by defining an ID for the form and then calling the jQuery function to perform the validation. So we'll do that later. And okay, let's first see some simple validations. If we scroll down and check the built-in validators function, so we can also define our own functions for validation, but we'll just check the simple validations which comes predefined with the Parsley. So some validations like required and email number are some simple validations. So let's go to our create.blade.php file and implement some validations. So what I'll do is I'll just go to the enter post title section and define required. So we have already defined the required file here. So let's go to the browser and reload. So if you click on add post, okay, for some reason, okay, we also need to specify the ID for the form, so I haven't done that. So let's define an ID of, okay, post form. Okay, and the way we call our form is, let's go to the usage section, and inside our script tag, what we can do is I'll just copy this code, and the ID is post underscore form, and .parsley function will call the parsley method to validate our form. So let's reload our page once again and add a post, and now you can see our Parsley validation for requiring a certain value is now working, and as soon as we click on something the validation goes away. So it's also real time and it's kind of awesome. So let's see some other validations that we can apply. Let's go to the documentation and let's apply a validation for email. So input type data parsley type equal to email. So the default one is for the HTML5 is type email. So in order to apply the validation for the parsley, we need to include this. So data parsley type equal to email, and let's go to our form and let's copy and paste that code here. So data parsley type should be email, and let's go and refresh our browser, and now as I post something random which is not a valid email and click on add post, so now you can see we get an error of this value should be invalid email. And we can also do one thing, that we can show the validation while the user is typing something. So as soon as the user is typing something, so as you can see, as soon as the user is typing something, we get an error of the value should be a valid email, but it doesn't work on the first time. So before we submit, the validation is not working. So in order to make that work, what we need to do is we need to put one more validation of data parsley hash trigger equal to key up. So on every key up, what it will do is it will call the validation function and it will show us the real-time validation. So whenever I click on it and now as I start typing, it shows us that the value should be a valid email without even submitting the form. And we do have some other types of validation, like the data parsley type should be of number, and instead of email what we can do is we can write number, save it and reload. And now as I keep on typing and put something alphabetical, we get the validation error of the value should be a valid number. And we do have some more options for the number type. So we can specify the data parser type could be of integer or type alphanum. So alphanum is generally combination of alphabets and numbers. So we can also have the validation of type URL. So let's just check this validation. URL. So basically a URL should consist of the HTTP. So it should start with the HTTP and then followed by url.com. Okay, I think I saved this, but I didn't reload the page and that's why it's not working. So HTTP and okay, let's give it a name of facebook.com. So this is a valid URL, so it's showing the green bar, so it's showing the green background color, and something which is not a valid URL will not work. And let's also see some more. So data parsley length, we can also give a fixed length value, and let's go and give a value of data parsley length equal to, okay, let's give it a length of 10. For our mobile number is generally 10-digit number. So let's reload our page and it should be between 10 and %s characters long. Okay, we need to provide an array here, data parsley max length. Okay, this is for the max length, and for the range what we need to do is we need to provide an array. So if we want exactly 10 numbers, what we can do is we can provide 10 on both these sides. So let's reload our page, and now it will take exactly 10 numbers, but as you can see the message here, it is saying that this value length is invalid. It should be between 10 and 10 characters long. So the message here is not appropriate. So what we can do is we can also customize the message that we want to display, so validation message that we want to display, and the way we can perform that is by, okay, let me just copy this. So if we have a validation of data parsley length, so the way we define the message for that is by tagging a message tag, and so the data parsley length is our validation, and the message for that is data parsley length message, and the message that we wanna display. So we can specify as the number should be exactly 10 okay, let me just see what is between, okay, 10 characters long. Save that, and let's reload our page. And now as I start typing, you can see the message that the number should be exactly 10 characters long. So we can customize it the way we want to. And okay, we can also have the min and max length, and we can also have a range and a pattern. So we can, what we can do is we can also provide a regular expression, and we can also implement a confirm password field. So if we have a password and new password and confirm password fields, and we want to check whether these two fields match or not, so what we can do is we can use this validation. So let me just quickly show how we can implement that. What I'll do is I'll just copy the whole div and paste it here, and what I want to do is, okay, let me just remove these two validations from here and also from here. And what I can do is I can input type of text. Okay, let me just give the input type of text, and let's give it an ID of new password. And now what I can do is, let me just copy this validation and paste it here. And data parsley equal to should be equal to new password. And now let's go to our browser, and okay, let me just enter a post title of 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8. And now as soon as I start typing, we can see the validation message that this value should be same, and as soon as the both are same, we get a success background. So we can also customize the message as well. So what we can do is we can go to equal to, copy that, paste it, and assign a message tag, and equal to, we can write as this value should be same as new password. Save it and reload our page, and now enter something, and as I click start typing, as you can see the message as this value should be same as new password, and it's working fine. And we can also implement the custom validators, but it's a bit advanced kind of stuff. And we can also implement some more functions like validating string, validating numbers, but we don't need these because we have already it already comes with some nice inbuilt validators. So most of our tasks would be done with the available validators that we have here. And one more, I wanna discuss about one more validation in this tutorial, that is implementing multiple validations in a single form. Like if you have a login form where we can log in the user using either an email or a phone number. So in that case, we need to implement email validation as well as a phone number validation. So if the user enters a phone number if the user tries to enter a phone number, so we can apply a validation of requiring minimum length, requiring the length to be exactly 10 characters, or if the user inputs the email, so the email should be a valid email. So we can also apply such kind of multiple validations on a single input field, and we'll also discuss about that in this tutorial. So let's start how we can implement that. So the way that we can define the multiple validations for a single input field is by creating our own custom validator. So as you can see in this in the documentation here, it has given a simple example where the validation is that the input field should be a multiple of 3. So what it is basically doing here is the validation name is custom validation name is multiple of, and what it is doing is it is sending a parameter as number 3. So and checking the validation here. So if the value percentage requirement, so the value that we get here is the 3. So if the percentage of 3 is equal to 0, then the validation is successful, otherwise the validation fails, and then the validation is getting applied here. And the way that it is applying the validation is by calling a function called Parsley.Addvalidator and adding a validator. So the name of the validator is multiple of, and then the logic is being applied here. So in similar case, what we will do is we'll define our own custom validator. So the way that we can apply that is by going to the Visual Studio Code, and what I'll do here is I'll just remove the extra form that we have, just so that we don't get confused, and I'll also remove this ID and ID new password. And let me check some other things. Okay, let's enter here, enter email or phone. So what we will do is we'll validate either, so the input field should be either of type valid email or a phone number of length 10 characters. So the name, okay, we don't need the name, the required, and the data parser trigger, everything is fine. So let's go to our script tag, and what we'll do here is we'll define a JavaScript value. So let's define a JavaScript variable of dummy email. So what we'll do is for the email validation, we'll define a variable where, and whatever validation we have here, we'll apply it here. So our validation will be should be of type email. So data parsley type, since the validation for an email should be of data parsley type equal to, okay, let me first enclose them with the double semicolons, and the data parser type should be email. And what we also need to do is we are selecting, so what we are selecting, so we are selecting an input field. So input, since we are selecting, so the input field we are selecting, the form we are selecting is a type of input, and the validation is data parser type email. And let's close our input field, and we need to call a function called Parsley in order to add the validation. And we haven't applied the validation yet, we are just creating a variable here. And for the number, what we can do is we can create a function, create a variable called dummy number, and we'll do the same thing. So we'll create a jQuery selector, and where the input data Parsley length is equal to 10, and we'll define the message for this as well. So let's call the function Parsley. And our next step is to add the validator. So we have defined our two validations, that is for the email and the number. So the email should be of type valid email, and our phone number should be exactly 10 digits number, so it should be 10 digits character. And the way we add our validator is by calling a function called Parsley.Addvalidator. So we can call the Parsley dot add validator, and it takes a name for our validation and some more parameters. So the name of our validation will be, okay, let's name it email or number. And our second parameter will be of type object, which takes two parameters. The first is a function called validate string, and which calls a function, and this function receives a parameter of data. So this data is basically the input field, which this data basically consists of the values like the input fields that we enter into our form. Like if we enter an email or a number, then those values will be received through this function. So this data is the parameter, and what we can do here is we'll return, since we define these two validators. So what we'll do is we'll return if the dummy email dot is valid. So it calls a function. So if the dummy email dot is valid, so if it is valid, so, and we also need to send the data, or if our dummy number dot is valid, so which also takes two parameters, our true and the data parameter. And so basically what it is doing here is, if any of these two validators, so if this is true or either this is true, then our validation will be successful. So if we have to implement OR here, so if we apply AND, then in that case our both the validation has to be true, like the input type should be a number and the input type should be an email, which is not possible. So any one of the validations has to be true. So that's why we are applying OR here. So if any of these two if any one of these validations is true, then our validation will be successful. That is, it passes our validation. Otherwise the validation will be failed. So our second parameter is a custom message. So what we can do is we can also display custom messages here. So we can display the message in various languages, and what I'll do is I'll just use the en parameter in order to display the validation message in English. So what I want to display here, our custom validation message. So okay, let me just type. So given input field, the given input value is neither a valid email nor a number of 10 characters. Okay, let's just save this. And so in order to apply this validator into our input field, what we can do is we can call the name of our validator. So the name of our validator is email or number. So let me just copy this name and go to our input field. So the name is title here. So data Parsley, and instead of O I need to write P, and our validator name. So data Parsley and hyphen hash, okay, not hash, dash email or number. So this is the name of our validator. So let me just save this. Now our validator should be applied, and the input field should be either of type email or a phone number, which should be of length 10. Now let me just go to the browser, reload our page, and now as soon as I type a number, so what happens when I type a number? Okay, it's not applying. Okay, we got an error here, and let me just check what's wrong. Okay, I finally figured out the problem why our validation was not working, because I had some mistakes. I made some mistakes here. I misspelled the spelling for parsley, and one more error, and okay, let's save this thing, and now it should work fine. We hope that it should work fine, but it doesn't work because as you can see we don't get any messages here. So the reason why this thing was not working, because we used hyphen in our validation name. So we shouldn't use hyphen in our validation name. So I also need to change that here. So I'll just save this and again reload our page, and now as you can see the validation is working fine. So if I put a number of 10 digit, then our validation gets successful, and if I put any valid email, and still our validation is successful. So this is how we can implement multiple validations into our input field. So now if we want to add more validations, what we can do is we can just add a validation with a var, and then a validation of what kind of validation we require, and then we can chain it here. So if you want and or condition, so depending on the requirement where we want to fulfill both of the conditions or any one of the condition, we can append and or in our logic, and then according to that our validation will be completed. I hope that you understand the functionality of implementing our own custom validators. So depending on our requirement, we can build our own custom validators, and I hope you understand how we can implement that. And if you like the content, do subscribe to my channel, and I'll keep bringing such contents in the future as well. So stay tuned and have a great time, and see you in the next one.